video here where I'm in more, vlog style. So I've been trying to make sure I do vlogs like every other month, things like that. But I'm not always able to do it. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to do it and everything like that. So it kind of makes things a little difficult to do, especially when my mood isn't into it. So I did that video where it was like 10 before the end, where I talked about 10 books I would like to get to before the end of 2025. And so I was like, let me do a little quick like refresher of going through all these 10 books and giving my opinions, like whether I DNF'd the book and my reasons why I DNF'd it, or if I was able to finish it, give my rating, try to do maybe more of a quick overview of what I thought about it, and try not to have it be too long, So the first one I decided to pick up because I'm like, I need to like just get into this author and see if I can get through the book. So I started reading The Nanny, right? I decided to DNF the book. I decided to DNF it. And so I can already tell, just based on like, I already have like, foreshadowing. I already have foreshadowing on what's going to happen in this one instance. And I'm like, I'm not feeling, there's a few reasons of why I'm DNFing this book. So one of them is, of course, the heroine, she used to be an OnlyFans content creator. Cassie, that's her name, Cassie. She used to be an OnlyFans content creator. Whatever reason, she decided to get out of it. So I figured what I'm going to end up doing is, because I'm DNFing this, I'm probably just going to skim through the rest of this book just to see, just to see. And I'm not going to get through the rest of the ebook. So she is a former OnlyFans content creator. She ended up getting out of it. And there's, in this book, as I'm going through, it shows like different things. Like there's this right here. There's this like little chat thing that obviously was through OnlyFans. So this at a la carte. And so you're like, a la carte, the hero is a chef. You're already getting foreshadowing, right? So it's going to be him. It's going to be him. And he sent her a $20 tip. And so he says, I love the way you come. And I'm like, So I'm like, okay, so clearly the dad she goes and decides to work for, she doesn't know that this guy used to be one of her, obviously, I'm assuming like a patron. What do they call it? Like followers? I mean, I don't know. I don't go on OnlyFans, so I have no idea what the audience is called. The guys who pay for seeing the content. So I'm like, are they called patrons? Are they? I don't know. You tell me. But I'm gonna say patron. So obviously, the guy here, Aiden, was one of her patrons that would send her things, And the one question I have is like, okay, I'm going through this and I'm like, how does he not recognize her? Was she wearing like a mask to disguise herself? Was she only showing herself from like the waist down and she wasn't showing like anything else about her body, And so I'm like, okay, I'm confused with that. Then she starts working for him and she's a live-in nanny, which is kind of like an uncomfortable situation because you're living with a man who's single, good looking. If he's attracted to you, there's definitely going to be some fucking, And there's a child involved. There's a child living there. It's going to, it's confusing. It'll just confuse the child, especially if the child discovers, that like they're making out and stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of a weird situation. You know, just like you're a straight woman, he's a straight guy, you're around the same age, he's good looking, she's good looking, you know. Then in here, she's living there, right? And the way she interacts with this kid, I don't know if Lana Ferguson has ever been around children, but it's, I don't know, you can't be fake. You can't be fake. You can't be like, oh, I'm a cool person kind of thing, you know, because children are not dumb. They pick up when you're being fake, when you're being disingenuous. You think kids are stupid? They're not dumb. They know when someone's being fake with them. And to me, it feels like the heroine is trying to be like the cool nanny, you know, and trying to impress the girl, her name is Sophie in here, trying to impress this girl that's 9 years old. And I'm just like, it just comes off very disingenuous and very fake. And I'm just like, I don't believe this woman. You know, like, I don't believe that she actually likes the kid, you know. This is the thing. I'm like, whenever I'm around kids, I never try to do a pretense. I never try to do fakeness with them because kids are dumb. Kids are not dumb. Kids will figure this shit out. So you be straight with them. You know, you be straight with them. You talk to them as a normal person. You don't talk to them like as a baby. You don't talk to them, you know, as just the way she comes off. It seems disingenuous to me. And so it makes me think like, Lana Ferguson, do you even know, have you ever been around kids? Have you ever been around children? Because it just seems like she doesn't know how to interact with kids. You know, that's what comes off to me. So that was the first thing that kind of like was like, I don't really like the relationship between her and this girl. It just seems very disingenuous. So I'm not liking that. Then the hero, when she goes and she's moving in, he decides, oh, I'm going to make pancakes for Cassie. This guy's a chef, right? He doesn't know how to make pancakes from scratch. Are you kidding me? How do you not know how to make pancakes, which are like the simplest thing you can make as a breakfast food? It's not hard to do, you know? And I'm like, this guy is a world-class chef, works at this expensive restaurant, right? Makes like these probably expensive dishes. And he doesn't know how to make simple pancakes? What? That's weird. That is just weird. And so I'm like, that's strange. What? It's to make her look like, you're like, oh, let me teach him how to do pancakes. And I'm like, okay, Rachel Ray, who supposedly doesn't know how to bake, but can cook. I don't know. That seems very strange. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck is this? Then, the other thing in here, oh God, now I'm forgetting it. Now I'm forgetting it. I wrote it down. No, those were all my points. So that's as far as I got. I only got maybe like a few chapters in, maybe chapter 4. I'm trying to look and see. Might have been chapter 4. I think it might have been chapter, yeah. I got about chapter 4 or 5 before I was like, you know, I'm not feeling this book at all. It just comes off as very weird, you know? And so I'm like, I'm just not feeling this. So I decided I'm just going to go and skim the rest of it. I'm going to skim the rest of it and then get rid of the book, you know? That's basically what I'm doing. I'm just going to skim the rest of it and see, because I don't know. I'm not feeling it. There's too many like weird things that are kind of annoying me. And I'm like, you know, nah, I think I'm done. So I'm going to move on to my next book, which I don't know what that's going to be. I'm going to go through my list and be like, okay, which one am I feeling next? And just delve in, and go from there. But that's basically what I'm going to do. So I'll update you later when I'm done with my next book and whether or not I finish the book or, I DNF'd it. And then I'll give you my thoughts on that. So I'll update you later. Okay, update. So I finished off My Favorite Hero. This one here was basically, like a grumpy sunshine. And she definitely was more of like more spunky type of heroine. And he definitely was a grump, I can understand why he was the way he was, though. So, he has this house that he ended up buying off of this older woman called Lou. She was in the town for, how many years. And so he had befriended her because he ended up like renting out the apartment. And she lived in, or no, I think it was, she lived in the small apartment and she wanted someone to rent the bigger part of the house. Because the house, the way it was, it ended up getting sectioned off. And so he was renting the bigger part of it. She was just staying in the smaller part. And then when she passed away, she basically, had him buy the house from her. And so he owns the house, and so he wants to rent it out. But there was basically like a stipulation that Lou had for him, that she wanted it to have access, the apartment, for someone she knew years ago. And so her name, she goes by Casey, but I guess her name is Catherine Casey, but she always goes by either Casey, or he started calling her another nickname. She knew Lou, the woman, when she was younger, but they ended up losing touch because of her mother, the woman's mother, and everything. And so she comes back into town and decides that she wants to go and stay at that apartment. So she's trying to get in, but she ends up getting stuck out the window. And so all he sees when he comes home is her shapely booty, hanging out the window. And so he finds out, who she is, and, he kind of sets up these rules of like, I don't want you doing this, I don't want you doing that, different things like that. Like she decides like, oh, she wants to go and hang up these wind chimes, and he's like, no wind chimes, And so he's kind of like being like a butt. And so she ends up challenging him. So while they're challenging each other, which I thought was hilarious when it came to the wind chime fight. It was just, that was funny of the story. And so while they're challenging each other, they start to get, attracted to each other, and one thing leads to another, and they, end up, getting together. I would say like, for the majority of the book, I did enjoy it, but I'd say there were like a few hiccups I had with the book. Melanie Moreland, I feel like has a tendency of doing this, where sometimes she has the characters get together, and I feel like they're almost kind of like in a honeymoon stage for like a little bit too long, where everything's all good and everything for, I feel like way too long, and it kind of gets, I don't know, you kind of get bored a little bit, where you're like, okay, is there anything going to happen? Is there going to be some kind of conflict or anything like that? I feel like she kind of gets into like that stage of it. And then sometimes I feel like her, even though I love epilogues, I love prologues and epilogues, sometimes I feel like epilogues can be a little bit too long for her. Like she'll have like these extended epilogues. And so I'm like, girl, it doesn't have to be that long. You could have shortened it a little bit. So she kind of makes it draw out a little bit. And so I'd say that was kind of like my issue right there. And then also like with the conflict, there was this conflict where, they kind of like, they sort of break up for like a day or two. And I didn't like how the heroine went about it, how Casey went about it. I didn't like the way she did it. I felt like it was really stupid. And I was like, girl, you're going to break this guy's heart. I didn't like that aspect to it. But I did say, like, overall, I did enjoy it. I liked that they had nicknames for each other. Like, his last name is Thorne. And so she kept calling him that, like, almost kind of like he's a thorn in her side. You know, that was funny. She also sometimes called him Hulk because he was a big guy. He was a firefighter. And she's like 5'3", so she's tiny. She's shorter. You know, she's shorter than me. I'm 5'6". So she's around my mom's height. And so she was, you know, skinny. Had, you know, obviously a little bit of a curve to her. Take a shower and then they don't tweak the off button enough to where I'll hear like drips and stuff. So it kind of drives me nuts. My husband does it with the other shower and I'm like, dude, you gotta let the water loose out of the hose. So anyways, that was kind of like my little hiccup when it came to that book right there. Always, I did enjoy it. The other conflict, I would say, there's usually some other kind of conflict. I noticed that with like, there's maybe like one person that might be like, there's some kind of conflict with another character. This one here was this guy named Chris, who's a complete fucking douchebag. This guy here, before Casey and, Jesse, his name's Jesse. Before Casey and Jesse had gotten together as a couple, she was like, they were kind of like in a, like, she's like, oh, I don't know if he likes me. I do like him, you know, but I'm not sure if Jesse wants anything to do with me. And so she decides to like reluctantly go on a date with this guy named Chris. And the dude takes her to this place that's like, oh, Monday nights, they always have pasta. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to complain too much about it, but it's kind of like, yeah, you're going to a bar, which I'm like, I wouldn't choose. I mean, personally, I wouldn't choose as a first date for myself, but honestly, I'm like, I wouldn't complain that much if the guy's paying. I maybe wouldn't think it was a great first date, but you know. Anyways, so he takes her there and then he starts being like this douche of like, why couldn't you wear a dress on our date? And I'm like, excuse me? Are we like from like the 30s, man? It's like, women can choose whether or not they want to wear dresses. Personally, I don't like dresses. I don't like to dress up. I prefer more this style. That's what I like. I don't really like to dress up. It's just not my thing. I'd rather be invisible. I don't want to stand out, you know? Like, I could easily go and wear shirts that go and push up my bosom and make, you know, show off my rack and everything like that and wear tighter jeans and all that stuff. I mean, I could do it if I wanted to, but I don't want to, you know? Because it's like, that's all guys see. It's like they just zero in and that all they see is the rack, you know? And then they see me walking with just, all I am is just a boob, you know? That's all I am, and just boobs. So to me, it's like, I don't know, I want guys to look at me more than my assets, you know? So he was like telling her, oh, why don't you wear a dress and dress up? And so he was being a total douchebag. And so she was telling him, like, you're an asshole. Like, we're done. This date is done. Like, it was just a very quick date because she was like, she didn't even eat. And she was like, I'm done. I'm done. And so she kind of like tells him he's an asshole and, you know, ends up leaving. So before she leaves, he grabbed her wrist, which is like, no. Do not do that. Do not grab a woman by any of her body parts. You know, you have to ask permission first before you touch her. So, you know, the fact that he went and grabbed her arm, it was kind of like being rough to where he bruised her, you know. And so when Jesse saw it, he was like ready to flip his shit. So he goes and he finds Chris. So like, you know, Jesse and her end up, you know, having sex. He finds Chris and he basically like, you know, punches him in the gut and tells him like, you stay away from her, you know? And they end up kind of like bumping into him again during the book, but he was kind of like a scared little boy, you know? He's a dick. So she kind of, that was kind of like the conflict that happened, but it was anything than that, and then that was a non-issue. So that was the only really conflict they had was that guy being a dick. But other than that, you know, it was mainly like their hiccups with their own like insecurities. So they definitely had like, they both had insecurities, and they both had, I'd say, lack of communication with each other. And so once they started communicating toward the end, it kind of wrapped things up, you know, for the better. Because he was like, you know, didn't want to go and fall in love or have a relationship because in the past he was hurt by an ex. His ex had cheated on him with his brother. Yeah. And then his whole family's mom and dad were like, oh, we like the brother better. And I was like, huh? How could you play favorites of your kids, man? You know, like, how can you play favorites of your kids? And you basically, like, don't want anything to do with your oldest child, which is like, why? Well, it never was explained. Like, I never understood why they never liked him. They never wanted to support their oldest son. I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, there's no, like, I never found out the conflict of it. Of like, why did they not like him? Why did they not care? You know? And the brother, I'm like, I never understood the envy and the jealousy he had for his older brother. I was like, I don't get it. I'm like, what's your glitch? You know, like, what's your problem, you know, with your brother, that, you know, you're going to be jealous of him, and then you're going to go and get his girlfriend and sleep with her. I never understood, you know? I never understood that aspect to the story where I was like, why? What was the reason? It just seems weird that his family don't really want anything to do with him, and the brother was just jealous and envious of Jesse. And I just was like, why? I don't get it. Why would you have such hatred toward your sibling? You know, like for me, with my sister's like 12 years younger than me. And I always felt like she always, like, for a while, wanted to emulate me. And then it got to a point where she started to get jealous of me and envious of me. And that's kind of like always been around. I never understood that. I was like, why? What is it about me that you envy or you're jealous of? You know? I never understood it. And so she always wanted to, like, compete with me with, like, guys, or I don't know, maybe like her numbers, like the amount of dudes she slept with. And I was like, girl, I'm sorry, but that is not a flex. I'm sorry, it is not a flex. So I was like, I'm sorry, but no one respects the town bicycle. I'm sorry. But with her, she definitely, even today, has a lot of deep-seated mental issues and insecurities. She's very insecure about herself and everything. And all I've ever tried to do is give her positivity and, like, you know, prop her up and say, hey, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this and you can do that. And all I ever got was shat on. So I don't have a good relationship with my sister. So for me, I'm like, I never understood that aspect of, like, why are you envious of this person? Why are you jealous of them? It's obviously you have really deep-seated insecurities that you need to address with a therapist. So that's what I kind of felt like with his brother. I was like, what's the issue, man? I don't get it. You know, and in the author never really delved into it, you know, so it was kind of like, that's weird. It's like, you know, but yeah, anyways, that's kind of like those were like my things with it. I still enjoyed the book. Like I said, there were a few things that were kind of like, yeah, the hiccups for me, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. That's why I ended up giving it like a 4, you know, instead of a 5. So the next book I'm on to, that I'm going to read is The Hermit by Michelle Hurd. Now, that series, the other series I was reading before, That one was very quick. So I think this one here might be the same thing. It might be a very quick story. I may get through very quickly. We'll see about that, how quickly I get through it. But it's another like mafia-esque type of book where I believe the hero is an arms dealer. So dealing with, obviously dealing with guns and all that stuff, whether illegally or legally, I don't know. And it's like a marriage of convenience, like I think it's a forced marriage kind of thing too. So yeah, I'm gonna delve into that and see how I like it. Hopefully I do. And that's the first book of a new series. So I'll eventually get back into the series when I'm done with all the other books. I'll get back into it after. That's if I really like this one here. I'll, delve into the rest of the series. But yeah, I'm gonna delve into that and go from there, and we'll see. I'm kind of like, I'm slowly marking the books off, to where I'm like, okay, let's move on to this one. And I'm gonna see like how much I can actually do before I kind of like burn myself out, because I'm trying not to do that. Trying not to burn myself out, because like I said, I don't really do well with books that I put on like a TBR. So I'm trying not to think about that, because if I think about it, I kind of like overanalyze it and burn myself out. So I'm not trying to do that. So if I'm like, no, let's delve into the next book and go from there and see what happens. So yeah, but this one here, I hope I like it, because I did really like that other series that she had did. That was the Mafia series, which, as I stated before, I'm not a huge fan of Mafia. So it's got to be, I really have to, enjoy it to, recommend it. But yeah, I'll update you all later when I'm done with that one and give you my thoughts on it. Okay, update. So I don't want this to be a long clip, because I am currently doing this vlog. So I really don't want it to be long. But I had made that community post. I'll put it like right here if you don't know what it is. I made this community post, and I didn't want to make a video on it because other people, I think some other people have made responses to it, and to me, I kind of think of this, I don't want a dogpile and everything like that, and I don't want my channel to be just drama, and all that stuff. That's the one thing I noticed when I was doing my one content, where I was talking a lot about like, stuff on Threads and stuff, but I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what, this is just not healthy. It's not healthy, and I just don't want to be in this constant, let's call out this person and that person, I didn't want that to be my constant content, so I got out of it, and I'm like, no, I just want to talk about books I like, books I don't like, go from there. So with this content creator, when you go and you say derogatory things, and you what's the word, like you denigrate somebody, you put them down, because I consider like certain, like you could read a certain type of book and it may be more of like what you would consider a popcorn book, maybe it's not as deep or as intelligent or intellectual as like other people would like it to be, but it doesn't mean it's any less, like you found enjoyment in that book, and that's what matters, so yeah, it may not be Shakespeare or something else that you think is like more important, you enjoyed it, and that's what is your main focus of reading, is that you find enjoyment in it. Now, there are people who they read because of education and they use it for that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Get smarter, yay. But there's plenty of us that we read for enjoyment. We read because it helps to distract us from the real world. We don't need politics and all these other things shoved in our books. We don't need it from content creators who want to shove their politics or whatever else down our throats. We don't want that. We just want to enjoy our books. And just because we don't talk about a particular thing going on doesn't mean that we don't give a shit. This is the thing that annoys me is that when people bring, oh, well, you don't want to talk about this thing, you don't want to talk about that, that means you don't care. No, I just don't want to talk about it. It doesn't mean I don't care. So I do consider some books to be more popcorn books. You know, they're not to be taken too seriously. They're just there for your enjoyment. You know, it's the same thing with like, you can go and watch a movie that's more of a popcorn movie. You sat there, maybe you didn't take in a lot of it. It entertained you for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And maybe like within a week you forget about it. You know, sometimes that happens with books too. Like some books I read where I'm like, I enjoyed it for that moment. But I'm like, am I going to remember it years down the line? Probably not. That's okay. That's okay. You can either pick it up and reread it again and remember it, or forget about it. You know, we're not going to remember every single thing we read. It's just, our brains just don't work like that. You know, our brains usually keep around the things that they feel is the most important and stuff away all the rest of it, you know? So it really infuriates me and frustrates me when I see content creators who do this. And then when I had talked about in my community tab, I had said I don't like it when creators, when they get after all this backlash and everything like that, they get like all these things said to them and all that stuff. I don't think, you know, saying nasty things to them helps or solves anything, makes things better. It doesn't. So that's why I would say, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it. Even if they say nasty things towards you, I don't think to say things back helps. It you know, like an eye for an eye, you don't always have to do that. So, but I get why, you know, romantasy readers would be upset over this. I completely understand. Even though I'm not really much of a romantasy reader myself, I can understand the sense of feeling like you got betrayed, you know? I can understand that completely. So I understand people's frustrations. I understand people's like hurt, where it's like somebody in your own community, like a book community, that is like saying nasty things, and then, you know, like they backpedal and they're like, oh, well, I'm not saying this toward all romantasy. And I'm like, no, you aren't saying that, but you're putting down other authors or other books so you could prop up these other feminist books or whatever the heck they want to call them. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from, where you're going with this, but you're going to piss more people off that way than you're going to get people to like you. And from what I heard, this individual is a part of like a marginalized community, and they were getting derogatory terms said to them. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's right to say that, you know. As I stated, like, one of my favorite quotes is like, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser, which is very fucking true. And I just don't like when you say something mean. That shouldn't be done. You shouldn't say stuff like that. Just because you're mad at somebody and you think, oh, I'm going to get back at them by saying this. And it's like, because this person's response, this content creator's response is, I want to end myself. You know, they're basically saying this. They're basically saying this in their 3-minute video. It's basically saying that they want to end themselves. They want to self-delete because of all the backlash. And now they can basically use all of these things that they were said to them and use it in their way of like, I'm a victim. I hate that type of content. I personally don't like any of that stuff, because I feel like it is emotional manipulation, and people can use that in a way. Like, I already saw somebody in their comment who was stating like, oh, well, you know, I'm gonna go and give you more money on your Patreon. I'm like, no, don't. No. That, to me, it's like, This is emotional manipulation. People may not agree with me on that, but I've seen this time and time again. People go and they'll say something, they get backlash on it, they apologize, the apology doesn't work, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm getting death threats and I'm getting all this other stuff and everything, and I'm just going to take a break and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's emotional manipulation. I've seen it time and time again in the beauty community. The beauty community was fucking famous for this shit. Of like, let's put the gray hoodie on and let's go and apologize and let's just cry and everything. It's emotional manipulation. That's what it is. Don't fall for that shit. Don't fall for it. I've seen it time and time again used in the beauty community, and I see, man, a lot more of the book community reminds me so much of the beauty community right now because of manipulation, like manipulating your audience. And it just, and you may say like, oh, that person's not doing that. I think there's way too many people that they have this, what's the term again? What's that term again where, oh, I have it in my head. I'm just trying to remember it. Parasocial relationship. There you go. People will have these parasocial relationships with these content creators, and they're like, oh, this person's my friend. I need to defend them. I need to help them. No, don't do that. I will tell people, please do not try to stick up for me and defend me. If I do something wrong, I have to atone for that. I have to apologize for it. And if people don't accept my apology, because that's the other thing too, just because you apologize doesn't mean people have to accept your apology, you know? And so if people would not accept my apology, that's something you have to live with, you know, is the fact that not everybody is going to accept the things that you have to say. And so it's like thrown too many times online that I've just seen it enough to where I'm like, oh God, here comes the apology. Here comes the apology tour. You know, it's like, it's just like, no. Admit that you know, either said things wrong and you're like, I said the things the wrong way. I'm sorry that it, you know, wasn't like that, and go from there. Or say it with your whole chest and just let the chips fall where they may, you know, kind of thing, you know, go from there. But I don't like when I see this type of content. And that's why I said, like, I did not want to make an individual video on this, because I'm like, I kind of feel like it's punching down and you're, you know, it's like low-hanging fruit, you know, drama sells kind of thing. And I just don't want to do that type of content anymore, you know, where it's kind of like this drama. I already had like enough from Threads, and I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to, you know, and whenever Threads get their like claws into a story, and I'm just like, oh boy, here we go, you know? So I think as a content creator, try to stay out as much drama as you can. And if you, like, you know, you're looking over a video and you're saying to yourself, you know, I don't think what I'm saying here is going to come across very well. So maybe I should just edit that part out or redo my video. Sometimes I do that. You know, like sometimes I will ramble on something and then I get into another freaking tangent, and then I'm like, oh boy, I'm going way too long with this. So sometimes I'm like, if it's toward the end of the video, I can edit it out. I'm not really good at editing and all that stuff. So for me, it's like, please don't get into these like parasocial relationships with these individuals that are online. Please do not fall for emotional manipulation, because people do this, you know? Is this person depressed? I don't know. You know, are they having like self-deletion thoughts? Possibly. But they need to have, whenever you have mental health issues, like I have a team, you know, like I have people around me that help me keep me level, you know. You as an individual should have that too. You should have people around you that are going to help you get out of that mental funk, you know. So I hope that this individual has people around them to help. But I call me cynical, but I've seen this too many times in, like on YouTube and on other platforms where you do this apology and then try to, brush whatever you said under the rug and act like nothing happened. And this person deleting their video, I don't think deleting it's going to help. Deleting that is not going to help. It's not going to go and make things better. People know what you said, So to me, it's like either say it with your full chest and go from there, or don't say it at all if you can't handle the criticism. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the freaking kitchen, So that's basically what it is. And I, like I said, I didn't want to go into a full video on this, but I get so annoyed when I see content creators like do stupid crap. And then they're like, oh, I didn't mean it that way, And like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I say things and I could put my foot in my mouth. Cause I've done that too. Or I say something and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean it like that, And if people don't want to like accept your correction, fuck them. Who cares? That's their issue. But yeah, I've just seen this too many times where I just think of it as like emotional manipulation. This person making this video saying, I'm in a bad place and I need to take a break. And I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like that type of content. I've just seen it way too many times. People will make up shit. Make shit up so that way they feel like, people feel sorry for them. It's like pity marketing, It's very similar. It's manipulation. I just don't like it. As somebody who's lived with depression for many years, I don't want to be a burden to people. That's the last thing I want, is to be a burden for people. And for people to like pity me or feel sorry for me because, oh, poor you got depression. A lot of people have got depression. We deal with it. We learn to live with it. Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to make that little side note for this, because I did not want to make a long video, discussing this and all that stuff and also like YouTube can consider it more of like bullying and everything like that. And like, people would want to like try to report you for report your video and all that stuff. That doesn't help either. It ends up like hurting us in the end, so that's why I don't like to go on like attacks and stuff like that with other creators, because YouTube just doesn't like that either. So but yeah, anyways, I'm doing good with the one book I'm reading, The Hermit. I think it's called Hermit. I like it. I do like it. But one thing I noticed about the author there, Michelle Hurd, a lot of times she has the males fall first, like them kind of like really quickly falling for the heroines and stuff like that. I don't mind it right now. It's pretty decent, so I'll, hopefully I'll finish that one up soon and talk about it a little bit more. So yeah, I'll update you all later. Okay, last update. So I finished off The Hermit. And this one here, I did like it. I gave it 4 stars. I would say, if there's any complaint I had, I would say that there was maybe a couple things that I noticed about it. I would say that I felt like the hero was a little too like good to be true, where you're like, this guy, it seems like a little too good to be true, in that aspect. And there was something toward the end that I was like, so I'll talk about that a little after. But this one here has it to where the hero, it's sort of mafia, I would say. Sort of mafia. He's more of, he's an assassin. He's killed like how many people? And he runs a like arms business, you know, so guns and stuff. So he runs that, and he's trying to essentially get people together to form this bigger group. You know, it's essentially what it is. He's trying to form a bigger group because you have the, I think it was, I'm trying to remember. Might have been like the Russians. Might have been like the Russians and this other group that were trying to like take them down and stuff. So he's like, well, if I get all these other people to side with me, then we have like, you know, obviously more power kind of thing. So he meets up with, I can't remember Grace's father's name, meets up with Grace's father. He has Grace and Sierra. And so he's like, Dominic's like, well, I want 50% of your business, you know, because Dominic ended up saving, that's what I forgot to put in my review. Dominic had helped Grace because Grace ended up getting kidnapped by these bad guys, and they like had punched, my stupid alarm went off. So they had like beaten her up and had held her for like ransom basically until her father like agreed to whatever it was they were looking for. And so Dominic had actually rescued her and brought her back to her father. So Dominic's like, well, I helped your daughter, now I want something from you. So he was basically saying like, I want 50% of your business. And so the father's like, in order for that to happen, I want you to marry my daughter, Sierra. Sierra's like, no. And with how Dominic looked, he looked very intimidating and scary because he had like all these tattoos on him and everything. He looked, you know, big and intimidating. And Grace is like, no, I don't want him to marry my sister because she knows what it's like to have, to end up being married to a man for some kind of business deal for her father. So she doesn't want that done to her sister, because Grace, when she had gotten married, her husband had essentially hit her and sexually assaulted her multiple times while she was married. So she has PTSD, as you could imagine. So she's very reluctant and doesn't want her sister to go through that same thing that she had to go through. So she's very much like, no, I don't care what happens. I don't, screw your fucking business. You're not marrying my sister, you know? And from this type of bravery that Grace shows, she impresses Dominic, and Dominic's like, I don't want the sister. He's like, I want Grace. Grace is like, she's fiery and passionate. Like, I like this, you know? I like that she stands up to me. So reluctantly, the father agrees to have Dominic marry Grace, because Sierra basically takes off. She leaves and she's like, I'm out of here. And so Grace ends up getting married to Dominic. And, you know, at first she's very reluctant. Like, she doesn't want to trust him. But what helps her is that Dominic's very, you know, obviously very patient with her. Plus also he has a woman who is like almost like a second in command. Her name is, I think, Avinka, something like that. And she has known Dominic since they were teenagers. She was like, you know, when she was 13 years old, her and Dominic were living in this foster care, and Avinka had gotten sexually assaulted. So Dominic was 16 at the time, and he had essentially killed the person that sexually assaulted Avinka and made it look like a suicide. So they've been pretty much thick as thieves, you know, since then, you know, where she protects him, he protects her. They have each other's backs. And there's definitely some history with her that we don't know yet. I don't know, like, throughout the series, if it's going to open up more of, like, her, her history, or if maybe, like, in another series, she's going to have something. But I know for her, because she was sexually assaulted as, like, essentially a child, because she's 13. I consider that still a child. She obviously probably hasn't been intimate with anybody since then, and everything like that. Keeps herself guarded very much. And she doesn't speak. She had essentially gotten to some kind of accident where it cut her throat. And so it affected her vocal cords. So she speaks in sign language and stuff. And so her and Dominic speak frequently with each other, sign language and all that. And so basically essentially was the book of Dominic marries her. He brings her to his place, and he essentially has Grace set the pace of their relationship. And, you know, he tells her multiple times that, you know, he is not going to push her to have sex. And if worse comes to worse, he even said the same thing, like if he had to marry Sierra, he had basically said the same thing, that he wouldn't be having sex. They would just do artificial insemination, you know, where she would still get pregnant with his child, but he wouldn't be having sex with her. So Dominic's very much like very closed off, very much like, they call him a hermit because he hates social interactions. He hates to be around people for any length of time because he loses his shit, you know? So for me, I'm like very much the same way, where I can socialize. I can be very social if I want to, but I have that socialization. I have a timeline for it because, you know, essentially, like, I have a social battery. And so when my social battery runs out, I am ready to fucking go. I'm like, get me the fuck out of here, you know? I don't want to be here anymore. So I very much have that. So when he was having issues and started getting like cranky and grumpy, I was like, I feel him. Or he was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And so he has obviously several places around that he can hide out in. And the one place that he hides out in is this place in the mountains where, you know, so that way people don't know where the heck he is. And so he ends up taking her to this place in like Slovenia or something like that. Because he's like Slovak or whatever it is. Slovaki or whatever it is. Which I'm like, I don't know, is that kind of like sort of Russian? I don't know. I don't know that type of culture, I guess you could say. Like, I don't know that you know, those types of people. I don't think I've run into anybody. Like, I know Ukrainian, you know, and Russian, but I don't know like Slovak. I'm assuming it's like sort of in that general area, you know. I don't know, like, I'm not good with geography and all that stuff. So, there's so many countries. I can't remember everything. There's so many countries. And there's countries that I'm like, that's a country? You know, I'm not good with world history. I barely can remember American history, so I'm trying to remember, like, you know, all these other countries. It's not going to happen. So, yeah. History was definitely not my strong suit in school. So he takes her to this place, you know, his home. And like I said, he has her set the pace of their falling for each other. And so I really liked that he really set the pace for her. He didn't push her because he knew what she went through. Once he found out, he was like, okay, I need to, you know, set the pace here. Especially because there was a scene where they were still at her father's house, and he had cornered her in her room and like pushed her down on the bed, and that was a trigger for her, and she started like tuning out, you know. Like, I think there's different types of responses. People don't understand, like when it comes to sexual assault, there are different types of responses to it. You could either be the type where you fight and you're a fighter and you're essentially taking your chance that you could fight this person off, or there's a possibility that they could kill you, you know? Or there's the other response where you just kind of like tune out. You know that you can't fight this person off. So instead of fighting, you kind of like almost essentially go outside your body. Your mind kind of like goes outside your body. So that way it will obviously help with the trauma, you know, and help with the pain and everything like that. Your body can have a way of like helping with the pain, you know, whether like tuning yourself out or other ways. Like your body does things to kind of like help mask the pain, you know. And women, we can deal with more pain than men can, you know. We have a higher tolerance for pain. So women can, you know, have a way of like going outside themselves, so that way less traumatic, I guess you'd say. So there's different types of women, and it's not that you, like, people will be like, oh, well, you didn't scream out, or you didn't, so you must have wanted it. No, there's different ways of coping with that assault. I'm a fighter, so I would fight, you know, I would be biting, scratching, different things like that. But I understand the women who can't, and the women who choose to go into a different space, a different headspace to deal with the trauma. So people who, they don't know what it's like, love to judge. So I don't do that. Now I'm like, I can understand different responses. You know, it's essentially your fight or flight response and how you handle it. I'm more of a reactor, you know, like you fight. I'm more of a fighter. Where I've seen people who they freeze. Like my husband, he's more of a, in a situation, he's not quick to respond to different things. So he's more of a freezer. He freezes. He admits it to me that he you know, he does that. He freezes. And I told him it's not anything bad. It's how your body responds. It's essentially your own body that responds to it, you know? So everybody has that, you know, has a fight or flight response. And it's how your body responds to it that, you know, you have to work with it. So not everybody is a reactor. Like I said, I'm usually quick, you know, something happens and, you know, I can react quick. But for other people, no, that's not the case. And like I said, it doesn't mean that they're weak. It doesn't mean that they're less than. It means their body responds in a different way. So, so everybody's different. So with her, obviously, she wanted to tune out of that experience because there's no way that she could fight that man off. So she had triggers. So her thing was basically going in almost like a catatonic state. And so with Dominic, he saw this, he saw it, he could see it in her eyes, and he knew like, okay, he had to back off, you know? So after he found that out, he felt really bad that he had did that to her. He put that in her, it put her in that situation where he was behind her. And so he was trying to work with her triggers, you know, and know that there's certain things that he can't do and what he can do to help her through it, you know. And so there was several instances where he, while she was still at the house, him getting to know her before they got married, he was essentially helping her through her trauma. So I really appreciated that. So I'd say like with him, it was a little bit of like too good to be true. They were almost like, in a way, meant for each other because he knows what it's like to be with somebody be with somebody who has that trauma response. Obviously, Avinka, had gone through that. So he saw it in her and had ways of helping his friend, which is, he considers her like a sister, which I thought was really sweet. And so he knew of ways to help Avinka. So now he's like, I can help Grace with her triggers and her responses. So I thought that was really sweet. And I'm trying to think. There was something else that happened that I liked, and now I'm like, it was in my head as I was speaking it, and now I'm like, crap, now I can't remember it. But he did a lot of different things. I would say the one thing that kind of bothered me is that there really was no time frame toward the end to where I'm like, okay, well, how far along has this been? Has this been like 2 weeks, a month? There was something where at the end, it was like how many months later. But the one instance where this was toward the end, and Grace had told him she wanted to learn sign language, ASL. So that way she can communicate better with Avinka. Even though Avinka can hear it, can hear her, but she wanted to be able to communicate with her, better, to learn, ASL. So she was speaking with Avinka, and I was like, that seems awfully quick. This Grace must be a really quick study, because ASL is not as easy as people think. ASLs can be complicated because the way the words are, you could spell things out. There's things that you could spell out, but then there's sign language that shows you words, instead of letters. There's letters and words. So it can be kind of complicated. I've seen somebody who spent years learning ASL. So to me, I felt like she learned it awfully quick to be having those types of like communications and stuff like that with Avinka. And I was like, she's either a quick study or the author didn't fully grasp the concept of time when it came to this girl, Grace, knowing sign language. ASL can be difficult to learn. Because for me, what I learned in ASL, because a friend of mine years ago, she had Down syndrome. She learned ASL, or at least some ASL. And so she taught us, ASL, at least how to spell our names. So I always remembered how to spell my name. So it'd be like Brand, where is it again? Damn it. Brand. This is a D. It goes like this, D and Y. So I know how to spell my name, but, saying the name, or saying different stuff is going to be a little bit different. Like I remember one time there was a man who I knew was deaf at the bowling alley, and I kind of waved him over to like ask him if he could help me, so I kind of pointed like, how do I do this? And I didn't really know much ASL, but the one thing I did know is I knew thank you. So when he fixed the screen, so I was able to do bowling with my family, he had walked away, and I wanted to say thank you to him, but of course, I knew he was deaf and he can't hear me when I'm saying thank you. So when he looked up, when he was over back to his other area, and he looked up and I went like this, I went like, thank you. And he went and did his sign language for you're welcome. So that's about as much as I know for ASL. I don't really know much. I would like to learn more, but it's having the patience of sitting in a class and learning sign language. I would like to learn though. If I had, sometimes I think my brain is just filled up with shit, So I would like to, I like to learn, and I like to be in a class and just learning something, not actually using it for like a career or anything like that. But I would like to learn like ASL and all different stuff that, you know, if I had the time for it, I would like to learn it. But yeah, I know like a few things, a few, you know, different things. And I actually dated a guy who was very hard of hearing. He would wear hearing aids and stuff like that. So he kind of taught me like a few signs and stuff. But yeah, I did like the book. And like I said, toward the end, I felt like I was, she learned a little too quickly. I'm like, I don't think you learn ASL that fast. You know, especially like with how complex it is for the hand gestures and stuff like that, you know? Especially with like some things, you don't think like, whatever the word is, you don't think that maybe that would be the word, you know, just the way that how they do sign language. You look at it and you're like, how is that a word? You know, like it looks weird, you know, I'll just say that. Like sometimes the ASL looks weird and you're like, I wouldn't think that would be the word, you know, like B. When I go B, I'm like, this is B. And I'm like, how is this B? It don't look like a B, you know? So you'd B, R. This doesn't look like an R unless you're going like this right there, you know? You know, B, R, A. This doesn't look like an A, you know? This looks like an N when you see it, like N, and an M is like this, so you get the 3 fingers. So that looks like an M, you know? And then if I go like D, that looks like a D, and then this looks like a Y. So some of them are like, how is that a B? How is that an A? And so it is confusing. So I could see why it could take a little while for you to get the hang of it, you know, and then communicate with people who are deaf. So that's why I said toward the end, I was like, I don't think she's going to learn it that quickly. So I'd say there was a few flaws in the book that I kind of noticed. But other than that, I still enjoyed it. I'm like, I kind of have to do like, you have to like suspend your reality. Some books, I do feel like they're more popcorn novels. So you almost need to suspend your reality instead of being like super hypercritical of them. So with this one, I had to suspend my reality a little bit and be like, no, I still enjoyed it. Even though I'm like, I can call out like, this would be inaccurate. This is inaccurate. I try not to like nitpick every little thing in a book. If a book is annoying me, I will nitpick it. But if it's not, if I'm enjoying the story, then I'm like, you know what? Let it go. And that's the thing that annoys me about some people is that, you know, they'll nitpick every little thing in a book. And it's like, do you even enjoy reading? I'm like, do you even enjoy reading? Because sometimes, I swear, some people read books and then they shit on it. And it's like, do you even enjoy reading? There are a few booktubers, you know, content creators out there that I'm like, I side-eye them because I'm like, all they do is complain about the book that they read, you know, whether it's popular or not. They're like, they didn't like this book, and then they complain about it constantly. And I'm just like, do you even like reading at this point? Because it almost seems like you just hate read. Yeah, some people I think do it, but this is why I don't watch their content, you know? I think obviously there's a subset group of people who like that type of content, and that's what if you like that type of content, good for you. But for me, I'm just not into it. I'm just not, you know, like, I don't mind like a spicy little rant every now and again of like, you know, I hated this book and here's my reasons why I didn't like this book. That's fine. I do that, but I just don't like to do it all the time, you know? So yeah, like I said, I can nitpick this book. I can complain about it, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to suspend my reality right now and enjoy the book. So I did. And I'm going to move on to the next book, which is called The Priestess. And that one, I think that's what it's called. I think it's called The Priestess. And that one has the woman, her name is Cassia. And she is the daughter of one of the crime bosses dudes. And I liked her because she was in the book. She was in the book, and she was basically telling her dad, calm down, because her dad was just way he was like hot-headed to the point where Dominic had to punch him in the head and knock his ass out. That's how much this guy was hot-headed. And the daughter was just like, I get it, you know. So I liked her. I was like, good for you, girl. At least you know your dad is just a bit unhinged, you know. So the second one is obviously the daughter. So I'll continue on with the series. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it anytime in December. Maybe. I really want to get to some like Christmas books and stuff and read some Christmas books in December. It all depends on my mood. So I will see how that goes, because I know how my brain is, you know, where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read these Christmas books and it's gonna be great, and then it doesn't happen, you know, and I'm like, I didn't read anything. I didn't read any Christmas books, you know. Like, I really wanted to read some like horror or thriller stuff like in the spooky month, you know, in October, and it just did not happen, you know, at all. So now I'm like, you know what, let me see if I can try to get through like maybe 1 or 2 Christmas books. I could see. I'm gonna show you like all the Christmas books I have right now that I own like physically. I'll put them like right over here, and you can see the amount of Christmas books I have. So yeah, and then I keep picking them up too. So I definitely need to like try to get through some of them, especially like I have how many Harlequins and stuff, and I still like to support Harlequin, even though I don't get to them very much. But I still try to support that company because that company's been around for a lot of years. A lot of years, like what, 60 years? They've been around for a while. And so I definitely want to get to some of those. Especially like there was an author that I keep buying her books. Her name is McKenna Lee, because I love the first book she wrote for Harlequin. I loved it. It was so sweet. I am a sucker for at any time maybe there's like a child that's autistic in the book or a child that has Down syndrome. I am a sucker for those books because, you know, when I was a teenager, one of my friends had Down syndrome, and she has since passed away. And so I miss her, and she was a sweetheart. So I used to go. Sorry, got a little emotional. So her and I, we used to go up to the street where I lived. Right up the street from me was a park, and the park had a swimming pool. So her and I used to, because we lived in the same apartment complex, we used to go up the hill, and I used to go swimming with her. And we would do that in the summertime. We would go swimming, and she wasn't the greatest swimmer, but it was good exercise for her because she was a bit overweight. And so I would go with her, and we would go swimming, you know, in the pool and stuff. And it didn't cost like 25 cents to go to the pool. And so we used to go there in the summertime, and I used to, you know, bring her back, you know, to her apartment. She lived with her mom, and I would say her mother was not the greatest mother, especially when it came to a child that had Down syndrome. So yeah, I would go with her to the pool, and we're part of like this little club on Fridays, and she would come with me to the club, and we would go and do like games with kids and different things like that. And Melanie would help with, that was her name, Melanie. Melanie would help with cooking and stuff like that. One time she accidentally made chocolate chip cookies with salt. And I was like, oh, it's an honest mistake, because if you don't have the label, they look the same. Sugar and salt looks the same, unless it's like brown sugar, white salt, and, you know, like salt and white sugar looks the same. So it was an honest mistake. But yeah, I remember that I had gotten the cookie, and I'm like, this is very salty. So yeah, I miss Mel. She was a sweetheart. But yeah, we would do that. So yeah, any books that have a Down syndrome child in it or a child that has autism, because my youngest has autism. Those books really kind of like, I love those ones. They're very sweet. So the first book I read from McKenna Lee was this, I think it was called A Child's Wish or something like that. And the woman's daughter, I think it was a daughter, woman's daughter had Down syndrome. And it was such a sweet book. So I definitely need to pick up more books. I need to read those books because I keep buying them with that author. Every time she comes out with a new book, I'm like, I'm buying it. But I'm like, I need to get around to like some of her books because I'm just being lame at this point because I have how many of her books and I have not read any of the other ones and I need to get to them. I'm just afraid like if I'm going to read it, I'm going to cry, you know? So, and the author, her son has Down syndrome. So I love the fact that, you know, her first book was basically inspired by her son. So anyways, yes, I'm very protective of kids, especially kids that have, you know, special needs and all that stuff, because I've been around children with special needs like my whole life. You know, like I said, my friend Melanie, when I was a teenager, and then when I was in school, there was children that had mental, you know, mentally challenged and or physical, you know, abilities like, you know, other type of like polio or things like that, you know, or what's the other one? I forget. Muscular sclerosis, is it? Maybe? I can't remember. But it's one of them where you're essentially, oh, I don't think it's muscular sclerosis. I think it's something else. I can't remember the name of it. But it's like, essentially you're like in a wheelchair, you know. But I was around children like that too, so I'm very protective of them. So anyways, not to get emotional, yeah, I need to get through those books, and there's some that are like Christmas books that she has done, so I wanted to get through those, and I hope I can. We'll see what happens and go from there. But yeah, I am gonna continue, like in December, I'll continue trying to read some more of my 10 before, you know, my 10 before the end kind of books. I'll try to get through some more of them in December, but I definitely want to get through at least a few Christmas books. I did end up like downloading some more, excuse me, some more Christmas novels that are on my Kindle. So I might get through some of those too. So we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to keep yammering on for this friggin' video. But that's pretty much it for this video here. Like I said, I'll do the same. I might do the same thing next month too. I might do the same thing where I do like this kind of like vlog style and go from there, because I've been feeling like vlogging lately. Sometimes I'm not in the mood to do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. All right, bye.